Hey, hello, welcome to another adventure in the Calumet wilderness with Sam Love. I am your host, Sam Love. Can you believe that used to be a landfill at one point? I can, because I remember when it was a landfill. Let's talk about it. Stick around. This was a dump up until the early 2000s. I remember what it smelled like back here down in the day, but it's been capped. Hello. Since 2007, and I'd read that the methane produced in there actually powers the electricity throughout the park. I'm more amazed that they got the smell taken care of. I'm also out here taking advantage of this being one of the last weeks of free parking here, because after April Fool's Day, the joke's on all of us. You pay to park up here. Yeah, just about finishing up with this oral history workshop series out in Munster. So I've covered a lot of ground out here. So bring me to your community to teach oral history workshops, and then after I do that, I'll go exploring and we'll see what's out there. Yeah, this kind of continues where we left off 2 weeks ago. I started up in Cal City on the Burnham Greenway. That becomes the Pennsy Greenway, takes us into Munster. The mile or so between where that ended and where I picked up here at Centennial Park in Munster. Yeah, that's a bit hairy for pedestrians and drivers alike. So what I'm doing today is walking between 2 points from the old maps. Really only exists in railroad lore anymore. Taking the Pennsy Trail between Maynard and Hartsdale. You'll see Maynard on the railroad maps. You had the Monon, Grand Trunk coming through here, as well as the Pennsy that we're on. And the history books have it starting in the 1880s. Doesn't say exactly when. It's interesting, you don't see it mentioned in Timothy Ball's 1884 book about the region. So it must have been a whole lot of nothing at that point. But ultimately it becomes one of the early industries out here, brick making. As the glaciers came and deposited so much clay here, up to 22 feet thick at certain points, where that was excavated are these two lakes we see in this park today. Hart Ditch, the reason why it's not all open water here, you can't really see too many of the remnants of the pre-settlement terrain out here. To have made this walk 140 years ago, I would have started in an area that was, seeing land extracted to build brick. Would have walked through a lot of muck, open water even, and then come to this rather bustling farm, which at its peak employed about 40 people. Hart owned about 20,000 acres out here, mostly wetlands, because he was able to see ahead. And then a ditch fell on him. We can look on the old maps and see, routes along the Sandy Ridge. It became Ridge Road. Got the Lincoln Highway, US 30, which formed part of the Glenwood shoreline there. And for many centuries, millennia even, in between that, you had a lot of open water. And I've seen some sources call it Katy Marsh. I've seen other sources call it Lake George. I suppose it depended on how wet the seasons were, right? These ditches here drained all that, opening up all this land to agriculture as well as a bit of brick making. Gotta keep all the riffraff out. All that infrastructure necessary to keep the well-to-do high and dry. Maynard is the area of Munster around Calumet and 45th. And then Hartsdale is underneath 41 around Hart Farm Road. Imagine that. It's very forlorn looking around here, even with the rich houses off to one side. And that highway 41 just lingers up there, just hovers over the ground. All these grays and beiges and browns. And none of this you sense careening down the highway up there. I mean, when you're on 41, it just looks like box stores. Yeah, here we are in the middle of it all, right? One of the most congested, busy box store corridors in the region, and yet like no place at all down here, existing out of space and time. Just beige and brown. And almost a century and a half ago, this would have been one of the bustling areas of this part of the county. Been one of the few areas out here where any type of development would have been happening. The barbed wire is absolutely atrocious. Are the people of Briar Ridge that afraid of us hoi polloi? Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's such an eerie contrast, because anyone from around here can tell you, driving on the boulevard, not fun, harried. And then down here, aside from some of the highway noise, just bleak and not open. It's pretty cluttered, lots of invasives and junk and barbed wire fencing. You don't expect there to be this huge retail corridor adjacent to it. Down here, it's just what few remnant scraps still exist. And then the legacy of what humans have done around here. It's just a little too quiet out here for me right now. There we go. By the early 20th century, both communities ceased to exist politically. Hartsdale was annexed into Schererville. Maynard was annexed into Munster. And now they're just curious places on a map. Hey, thanks for joining me. It's been really fun having this residency out in Munster, basing my adventures from there. So I'd love to do that in another place and another time. All right, you take care. See you in the next adventure. Something tells me it's going to be a little Calumet River.